Welcome to Lesson 8 in mySci's Unit 8, Putting on a Show with Light and Sound. In this lesson, students will answer the question, how do we use sound to communicate to people who are far away? In this lesson, students will figure out that messages can be communicated across a distance and that people use a variety of devices, including telephones and computers, to send messages to people who are far away. In the Engage portion of this lesson, you'll start off by brainstorming ideas with your students about how we use sound to communicate. You can record these ideas on chart paper. Explain to students that right now it's pretty easy to talk to each other because we're in the same room and close to each other. You'll then challenge their thinking by asking them, well, how would we communicate if we were across the room from each other? What if we were across the country from each other? Allow students time to brainstorm these ideas with a partner. And if students don't bring up the idea of cell phones or computers, you should bring them up as tools we use to communicate. In the Explore part of this lesson, you'll start the conversation by asking students how people communicated before cell phones and computers existed. You'll guide the conversations to explain that we used to use drums and signals to communicate using sound across distances. Explain that when this occurred, the sound would travel through the air with sound waves. Emphasize that sound waves can travel through other materials besides air. For the next part of the Explore, you're going to need the string and the cups found in the mySci kit. Give each pair of students a 10-foot string and 2 cups. Tell students their challenge is to use the string and the cups to communicate to each other from across the room without yelling. Have students draw their brainstormed ideas on the student journal page Communicating Across a Distance. They should use their scientific drawing rubric as they create their drawing. Once students are done brainstorming, they'll then use their cups and strings to create their device. Have students test their device by whispering into one end of the device and seeing if they can interpret it on the other end. In the Explain portion of this lesson, your students will watch a video that explains the history of communication, starting with letter writing and how long it used to take letters to travel across the United States to the development of the telegraph and the telephone. Have them compare their device that they created in the Explore section with the cups and the string to a modern device like a telephone. You may need to bring images of telephones that used to have cords to connect the idea of their device to the telephone. In the Elaborate portion of this lesson, you'll ask students, what other devices besides telephones do we use to communicate across distances? Hopefully some students point out that we use computers to communicate across distances. You'll then explain to students that computers need a program to help us communicate across distances. And to program a computer, humans have to do what we call code. When humans code, what they're doing is they're telling the computer what to do. So it's a way of communicating with the computer. At this point, you're going to give students a small lesson about what coding is and allow them to try their hand at it. Show students a short clip about what coding is, and then have them turn in their student journal page to coding a shadow puppet. To use this handout, first have students sketch an image of a shadow puppet that they might use in their shadow puppet show that they're going to be designing. Encourage students to use simple designs for this project. Then have students write the instructions on how someone else could draw their character that they created. They should be very clear in their instructions and they should go step by step when they're writing their instructions. Once students have their step-by-step instructions on how to draw the character that they created, have them fold the top half of the handout down, the part where they actually have their image drawn. Then have them change papers with the partner so that the partner is only looking at the set of instructions that they wrote out. Then you'll challenge the other partner to draw the character from the instructions given by the other student. This is an example of what a student's journal page may look like. This example is found in the teacher pages. During this activity, students should find that it is difficult to communicate with the partner about how to draw their character. Make the connection back to computers. Explain to students that as humans, we have to be very detailed when we communicate with computers, but we also have to be very clear in our instructions. Have the students share out if anyone was successful in recreating their partner's image. In the Evaluate portion of this lesson, you will ask students, what are some devices that we use today to communicate across distance? How did we create a device in our classroom that was like a telephone? How did it work? You'll then have students go back to the drawing they made of their device that they created with the cups and the strings and have them label it. You'll then have them use the scientific drawing rubric to assess their creation. Students should then explain to a partner how this device allowed them to communicate with each other. They should highlight that the sound waves traveled through vibrations in the string. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to answer the question, how do we use sound to communicate with people who are far away? By building their device with the 2 cups and the string, they've used materials to design and build a device that uses sound to communicate over a distance. They've also practiced this when thinking about how humans communicate and code a computer.